In American society, money is a taboo topic. We're taught at a young age it's improper to talk about it, but we're also bombarded with messages about the power and importance of money in our everyday lives. And by not talking about it, we miss out on the skills and lessons we need to effectively understand and financially plan. That changes today. Welcome to Money Tales. Hosted by Sandy Brager and Cami Doder, Money Tales brings more than 35 years of combined professional experience in personal finance to demystify money and demonstrate what it's like to speak openly about personal financial matters. Join us each episode as they interview modern-day movers and shakers about how money decisions intertwine with their daily lives in order to give you better insight into productive financial conversations. Subscribe today and register for our blog Fathom at aspiriant.com/podcasts to increase your money mojo. And now, here's Cami and Sandy.
Marla Sofer is our guest this week on Money Tales. Marla had an epic career in financial services and fintech. Along the way, she developed an entrepreneurial itch that wouldn't go away. Realizing she only has one life to live, Marla decided to align her work with her values and leapt into entrepreneurship. A key motivator was her daughter, who after hearing Marla's dreams asked, "When are you going to do it?" Realizing that Marla was modeling more for her daughter than she thought, Marla took this as a double dare that she wanted to go after. Today, Marla is the founder and CEO of Knomee, a software company empowering people to thrive financially. She's also the founder of two women's networks driving change and inclusion in corporations. Marla is a frequent speaker on topics related to the future of financial services, wealth, and asset management.
Here are three key money topics Marla hits on in this conversation. First, how she intentionally chose to go to a public university so she could use the balance of the money her parents had set aside for her college education to fund travel and other experiences that were important to her. Second, what it's been like to be the breadwinner of her family and decide to step away from a big job to start a fintech firm from scratch when she and her husband have different beliefs around money. And third, what if money isn't your goal? There's power in having money conversations that don't involve actually talking about money. We hope you share this episode with a friend, and please subscribe to Money Tales on your favorite podcast platform. Now on to our conversation with Marla Sofer.
Welcome to the Money Tales podcast. I'm Cami Doder.
And I'm Sandy Brager. Cami, do you get notifications through your credit card about what your credit score is?
If I do, I don't pay attention to it.
I think along the lines, I must have signed up for this because every once in a while, I get these little pings of your credit score is up, your credit score is down. Whenever it goes down a little bit, I have this emotional reaction, this little jarring, wait, what?
And why?
Exactly. It's come up before on Money Tales where people begin to think that their credit score is a reflection of who they are as human beings, which is not the case at all. Credit scores simply capture your ability to pay your credit on time, any outstanding credit that you have. That's where most of the weight of the credit score comes from. Also, it looks at the amount of credit you use relative to your maximum credit on your credit cards primarily.
And they want to maximize that.
They don't want you to max your credit. The sweet spot is about 60 to 70% of your overall credit limit is what you want to use. If you get too close to that limit, it's signaling to someone that, oh, maybe you're using too much. Looks at your credit history and then also the variety and types of credit you have. Like, do you have a mortgage and a car loan, or do you just have a bunch of credit cards outstanding? People need higher credit scores when they want more credit. Like if you're going to buy a home and you want to get a mortgage, or you're going to buy that new car and you want to finance it, or you want to increase your outstanding credit limit. But if you're not dependent upon those things, I'm not suggesting people have low credit scores, but the credit score doesn't really impact your life. You really need to think about your credit score in the context of what you're trying to do financially. Are you someone who's going to be using more credit and you need that score high? Then pay attention to some of the things that we talked about. We have a great article on our blog, Fathom, actually several about credit that you can look up. But if credit isn't a big part of your life today, it's generally a good idea to keep your credit score high just in case something comes up and you need to use your credit. But it's not something to freak out about when it goes up or down 10 or 15 or 20 points.
That feeling, that behavioral psychology of seeing a number going down, it's very well studied by Daniel Kahneman, and that concept of risk aversion and how bad you feel when something goes down versus the joy you feel when you see something go up. Having done a lot of work and studies just around a credit score in general, coming from this background, a credit score is a heuristic for credit providers. It's not made for you, it's made for them.
It doesn't assess who you are as a person.
It serves them. It is a quick, fast shortcut for somebody to assess your creditworthiness.
So turn off that whatever is in our brain that we think these are our report cards. How am I doing in the classes of credit?
They're trying to get your attention.
Oh my gosh, Marla, it sounds like you're going to have some good context for us. Let's turn to you. Welcome, Marla Sofer, to the Money Tales podcast.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. And I love that people are waking up to this concept of what I call at Knomee financial identity. And what does that even mean? And the only tool we've had in the past is a credit score. And it's so much more than that. And so, yeah, I love that opening conversation.
Thanks, Marla. Would you introduce yourself and share a couple pivotal moments that have transpired in your life that really impacted who you are today?
I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. I've got grandparents that fled the Holocaust and became business owners. My parents also both took risk as business owners. My dad is actually a financial advisor and has been since 1984. I grew up, went to high school, then went to UT Austin, and I moved to Israel and studied peace and conflict resolution. Wanted to become a diplomat. The economy back then in Israel was struggling, and I actually moved back to the States, worked in nonprofit for a little bit, and then I had my next pivotal moment. So I actually decided to go to business school, and I got into financial services in 2004. It was my first job at a private bank. I became a licensed advisor as well. And it really opened up what then became still a very nonlinear journey, but still a journey within financial services and fintech. So worked in financial services for a long time, worked in a private bank, and then I moved to JP Morgan, and then I moved to BlackRock. In 2015, after actually a lot of inspiration from Larry Fink and a lot of just the conversation, living in the Bay Area, surrounded by fintech, recognizing that I want to be a part of that. I want to really deeply understand APIs. They were really exciting to me, APIs. That's kind of a little geeky, but it's because I worked in global custody and everything surrounding the guts of when you actually execute a trade, what actually happens in which systems to then come back and show you that that trade settled, or when there's a corporate action or some sort of an activity. So I got very excited about that. And I got very excited about fintech and how it can actually help people solve their actual problems in life.
Hey, Marla, can I interrupt you for a second and ask you to define for folks who might not be familiar with APIs what you're talking about?
Sure. So APIs are basically application programming interfaces. All it means is connecting one system to another. It is connection. As we get into a world that is more and more and more supported by tech, it's become more important that each of those different systems of tech don't live in a silo on an island. And what APIs are is your network of airplanes flying across the globe. If you want to look at the island analogy, it's like that connective tissue between the systems to actually help people achieve what they want. So going back to your question, my next big, massive, pivotal moment was a year and a half ago when I decided to become a founder and launch my own company. And it was a long time coming. It was years and years of thought and fear and developing a concept, an idea, and this realization of we've only got this one life. A lot of what I'm building at Knomee is getting very in touch with what are your values? How do you make sure you live your life to the fullest? And my own reflection on, for me, launching a company that I believe in and that has a lot of purpose and meaning and will improve people's lives is a huge part of who I want to be. And so finally made that leap a year and a half ago.
Super exciting, Marla. Let's go back to growing up in El Paso, Texas, and share with us a little bit about your first connections with money and when did it start having meaning and emotional value to you?
I was a very entrepreneurial kid. I liked lemonade stands and selling Girl Scout cookies. I have an older brother and a younger brother. And my older brother I would always envy because all of the money that he got would stay where it was and he wouldn't touch it. And money for me was something that I enjoyed using and spending. And I always had something that I was saving for or looking to buy because it was very much a part of me taking joy and expressing, well, I got this money for a purpose. It's a tool for me to actually find something that I love. And I feel like the relationship that I had with money was also inspired by this very strong sense of independence that I was given by my parents. I started working probably when I was 11 as a babysitter. I had my first part-time job anyway. When I was in high school, probably by 15, I was working. I worked in the mall. I sold Subway sandwiches. Work has always been a huge part of my life that I take pride and joy in. It's never been about, I need this. It's been about, I want this. It's part of my identity to be independent.
You're growing up with a strong sense of independence and you like working, you like buying things with the money that you're earning from your work, and you head off to UT to go to school. How are you thinking about money as you transition from a young person living within your family to an independent woman out in the world?
Money definitely had a lot to do with the fact that I went to UT. My parents had fairly blue collar jobs. They were in fairly steady positions. And then in the mid 80s, both of them took a high risk independent leap. My dad becoming a financial advisor, my mom in 1987 with 3 young kids launched a business. And my dad actually, because he was a financial advisor, created a nice little education fund for me and my brothers. Both of my brothers actually went to private schools. And I made a very deliberate choice saying, I want that money for all of the other experiences I want in life. I'm going to UT. I even got a scholarship. And I was very deliberate about it. I said, I definitely want to do a junior year abroad. I know I want to travel across Europe. And so it was a thoughtful approach to, yes, I got into a really great, expensive private school. And I said, yes, but what are the trade-offs?
Did you actually talk with your dad about this? And tell us a little bit about that conversation, because there's a lot of parents who might say, no, this was money for school, not for other activities like travel.
First of all, my parents raised me and know me. And even if they would have been an influence, I don't think it would have impacted my choices that much. I've been a pretty headstrong, independent person with a very clear vision of what I wanted. It was actually a challenge. So the school that I got into, my dad actually, even today, he makes jokes. It's one of his biggest regrets that I didn't go to WashU in St. Louis. And what a great school that would have been for me. And I was like, yeah, well, I didn't have that horrible of a career after my education at UT. And I always took pride in the fact that I was often surrounded by Ivy League grads who came up through these associate rotating analyst programs. They had an easier go of it. And my go was much more about having elbows and fighting my way up and proving that it didn't really matter where I went to school or even what I studied. I didn't study business or economics. My bachelor's was a dual degree in sociology and Hebrew. So it really was not relevant. Only later I got my MBA, but I've kind of incorporated all of those things as part of my narrative. I take a lot of pride, and I got my MBA at Rutgers. Same story. I went to a public education. I paid for it myself and had a very different journey.
Tell us more about going to B school and making that first real pivot in your career.
So I was working full time at a nonprofit in fundraising at the time. I wanted to study business. I did not know that I wanted to go into banking. I was really excited and inspired by business. I was actually working full time and I went to school part time in the evenings in Newark, downtown Newark, New Jersey. It was a hard life. I look back at it and I don't know how I did it. I was working full time. When I was maybe a year into business school, I got this job at a bank, Bank Leumi. It was a international bank in Midtown Manhattan. I commuted from New Jersey. I would wake up and be on the train by 6:10 in the morning. I would work until 5, be in class by 6:30, and then home by 11:30 most nights. And I did that for 3 years. The last year of it, I was also pregnant. And I kind of look back and I'm like, how did I do that? But you don't really think about it when you're in it. I was very motivated. I wanted to get my business degree. I knew I couldn't afford to do it full time. So you do what you got to do.
So you're figuring this out. You're going to business school. You're turning your attention toward business. You're in the financial services sector. You described your interest in the technology piece. Tell us when you started becoming really aware of your own relationship with money, Marla.
Honestly, probably within the last year, maybe even within the last few months. Knowing about it from a distance is something that I've always been aware of. I've been cognizant of my relationship with money. Over the last year, I've gotten really, really deep into money psychology and money beliefs. There's the whole entire industry around money therapy and really deeply understanding what does that even mean, a relationship with money? How do you assess your relationship with money? What goes into that? And so I've now had my eyes wide open, and I think it's so critically important. The reason I launched my company is because 90% of Americans, and I believe this is even a low estimate, feel stressed about their money. One of the first things I heard when I went to launch the company with my academic advisor, who's a PhD in behavioral psychology and talks about the psychology of money when she teaches PhD classes at Columbia and Kansas State, is people hate talking about money. There's so much research. There's two very famous studies. One is that people would rather be in major dental surgery, or people would rather talk about sexual positions than talk about money. It's just that topic that people absolutely despise. I got very curious about it, coming from deep within the guts of wealth and asset management and saying, this is your money at work. How many people actually know where it is, what it's doing? Where is it sleeping? Which companies is it supporting? They have no idea. Most people don't know that when you buy a fund, you actually become an owner in each of the constituents in that fund. There's kind of a level of disconnect between people and their money and what their money's doing and why their money's doing that, for what purpose.
You mentioned that you really started understanding your relationship with money in the last year, maybe less. Is it because of the work you do at Knomee, or is it because you were going to becoming a founder, or you had become a founder and money had new meaning to you?
Definitely both. I would be lying if I didn't say that my whole entire path to becoming a founder was not intrinsically linked with like this new awakening around money. I went from BlackRock into fintech. I went from fintech to Microsoft. I would kind of set a goal for myself and say, I want this corporate job. I want to make more money. I want more impact in what I'm doing. I want to rise corporate ladders. And I got to a point where I was like, it's just not fulfilling. I kind of wanted to prove these things to myself, and the things were becoming less meaningful to me personally. The decision to become a founder was really, really hard because in my own home, I was always the breadwinner, the supporter for the family. My salary was hugely important to our future and supporting the kids through college and everything else. And the lifestyle we live, it was extremely disruptive for me to say, I'm going to stop earning those salaries and make nothing for a while.
So tell us more about that, the actual feelings and the conversations you were having with your family.
I would tell you the hardest feeling was my own, and it still is, it's my own insecurity of, can I believe in myself such that I can start making money again, so that I can like build a company that's going to be profitable and support my family. And I'm not there yet. It takes a long time to launch a software company. The first step is, do you have an idea? Does the idea solve a problem? Can you raise money on the idea? And I have been able to do those three things. There's steps along the journey. Honestly, it's a level of fear that I don't think I've ever felt in my life. I never struggled before with not being able to sleep at night, heart palpitations, and all those things that a lot of entrepreneurs get. And now I know it firsthand, where it's just a level of insecurity and fear that I have had to kind of be my own coach and find support network to kind of remind me that this is my choice. A lot of actually good girlfriends of mine have been very helpful in telling me, this is why you built that cushion. You've got the cushion, and now you have a huge opportunity to do something really important and impactful for a lot of people. That's why you're here. That's why you're doing it. Keep going. And it's hard.
It's really hard. And Marla, there were conversations and ongoing conversations you're having with your husband about money. Would you tell us a little bit about those and how you approached having that as you started the business and even today?
Probably for a couple of years, I vocally dreamed about, this is something I want to do, and expressed this interest in it. One of the key reasons that I made the decision to be a founder is my daughter. And she had heard me talk about it and was like, when are you going to do it? I was like, oh,
She called you out.
Double dared you.
she's listening and watching me. And I'm more of an example than I thought and that I knew. In those conversations, it always kind of bumped up against resistance because my husband's beliefs around money are very different than mine. We have very different examples. We have very different careers and relationships with money. I've always been the reliable person who would go get a good job, have a big salary. And I knew that I was shaking that up. And so those conversations were really hard, were really tense, but also really good for our marriage in understanding that, okay, we can go through these hard things. It wasn't easy. This took months and months of hard work. But I felt over time that there is space for me to do what I want to do and find the right support, even if it's not always at home, to keep pushing along. And also at the same time, change the way the conversation is happening at home to get more support. And of course, the first few months, there's nothing. I was not paying myself. We were just bleeding a lot. It was horrible. When you hit a milestone and I built relationships with investors and got some money in, it was like, phew, I can take a little bit of a breath. I raised more money and I could take more of a breath. And then went through lots of ups and downs, just finding team and people to work with me. And it's just a lot of strain and stress and trying to create a really solid foundation for myself to stand on as independently and with the support of supporters versus detractors as much as I could.
Marla, it's thrilling to hear you describe all of this. And I have goosebumps for hearing your story of getting outside of your comfort zone and coming to the fore of so many money conversations and decisions as you're working in the money world with what you're doing with Knomee. As you've been going through this exploration over the last year of the behavioral side of money, the emotional side of money, how has that informed decisions you're making as you're facing this fear and some of the insecurity you described feeling along the way?
I've changed a lot in how I believe and talk about money. And I do try to post about it. And I want more people to go through this shift. One of the things that I've learned about, and frankly, a lot of behavioral psychologists, a lot of financial companies are now trying to do this, is make the conversation not about money. And one of the things that we do at Knomee, whenever I do a talk, is we say, okay, what if money's not your goal? And what if your entire thought about money had nothing to do with money? If you just change the way you think about it and say, money is a tool, put it aside. What you need money for is what you should be focusing on, not the money itself. And that's also been really empowering for me in my own relationship with this new knowledge of behavioral psychology around money. One of the things that we do at Knomee is even the process of identifying a goal is really hard. And I think a lot of planners, advisors ask people, what are your goals? And people shrug and say, I don't know. I've never really thought about my goals. What we've learned from the psychology is the first step is to really try to hone in on what brings you joy. What are those moments in your life when you look back at your credit card statement and look at where you spent your money, or if you look at the time that you spent, what are those things? And then once you identify those things, you can start to hone in on goals, and it's short-term and long-term goals. I had a similar experience. I'll be very vulnerable here and say I recently, for the first time in my life, started working with a therapist just because I have so much going on in my life. And I felt like I needed a sounding board to kind of work with. And the thing that stopped me in my tracks was when she asked me, what are your needs? And I was like, oh my God, this is my entire life's work and I'm unable to articulate my needs. How messed up is that?
It's so common. We're all guilty of that because we're serving others. We don't even think what our needs are.
Exactly. And I feel like there's very few moments in time where women, especially professional, hardworking women, they don't even have to be professional, all women, and not only women. We don't give ourselves the space to even make ourselves a constituent, a stakeholder that we care enough about to answer that question. It's all about the service. It's all about what can I do? And even defining, okay, which of those types of service are the ones that meet my needs? Maybe it is service. Great. There's probably some service you love doing and some service you hate doing. And even that is an insight into your needs. And so I do feel like that first step to articulating your goals of identifying what is financial joy, what brings you joy. The next step might be, what is actually giving you some pain? What are those things you want to subtract that are the things that you dread doing each day or each week or each month that you may want to outsource, or you may want to have a conversation with your partner and say, I don't like doing this. There's something that maybe we can switch up our roles here. That type of conversation is very often not had. People are very much looking for money without recognizing that money is meaningless if you don't have a purpose for it.
I'd like to highlight from what you just shared the importance of having that emotional connection to what you're trying to achieve in your life is so important. If there's something you're truly trying to achieve, you have to have that passion, that care, that emotional tie to it. Else, there's no way you'll achieve it, or you could achieve it, but it will be meaningless to you, regardless of the financial impact, whether it's plus or minus. So thank you for bringing that together. As you were talking about your experience as a professional woman and as a woman of the world going through this, I also want to identify something that you haven't said out loud, which is the experience you've had being a female founder. And I'm curious to know how that has been for you as you've been in conversations with investors and looking to raise money for Knomee.
All the hype is real. It's all true. Being a female founder is exponentially harder than being a male founder, not only in speaking with male investors and speaking with female investors. There's societal bias that I've been very deeply familiar with. I've been very involved in women's organizations and corporate environments for decades. As a founder, I have felt it more acutely than ever before. I've led a lot of initiatives to be like, no more manals. When you go to a conference, you want to see the faces of women as leaders, and not always the moderator and not always the person that takes the notes or passes the microphone. It's extremely hard to find. And look at our society. If you ask anybody, who are the tech founders that you most admire, I bet everyone can quickly rattle off 10, at least 5 men that are those individuals that are considered innovative, outrageously wealthy, successful in the enterprises that they built. It's much harder. It's been hard for me even. I kind of wanted to do a feature of leaders in tech. And you have to kind of pause, wait, why does my brain go to these guys all the time? Until that model changes, it's going to continue to be extremely, extremely difficult for female founders. We just don't fit the model. It's too hard to find the sample. And all an investor's job is, and unfortunately, this is how it works, particularly in private equity, is I'm really good at finding trends. I spot trends, which means all of my future decisions are based on past. And if that is going to be what drives decision-making and investment, we're never going to see change. And there's so many facts and data, and people know and recognize that women are much more cautious with their burn rates, which means that they're spending less in their companies. They're much more diligent in the way they do things. They actually dot their I's and cross their T's a lot more effectively. They're much more thoughtful.
Which isn't rewarded. That's the issue.
No, none of that's rewarded.
It's taking the risk that's rewarded and being aggressive and not dotting I's and crossing T's.
That's right. And so quickly forgotten. You look at the story of Adam Neumann. I saw some big company had this huge, massive thing saying, we are inviting Adam Neumann to talk about whatever. And I was like, oh my God, really? That's the example of a successful founder that you're bringing to talk about launching a viable company?
What's one thing each one of us can do to break this model?
Just ask yourself, if money's not your goal and it was only a tool, what's it a tool for? That is the number one tiniest thing that you can do. Stop thinking of money as your goal. That perpetuates stress. It perpetuates comparison. I would even say it's better to look at somebody and feel some sort of an envy or whatever for what they're doing with the money than the money itself. Okay, I really like that car, or I really like that whatever. Great. The car is your goal, not the money. But I feel like when you make that shift in your brain, you put yourself in a frame of mind to get more actionable and focused on what behavior change you're going to take for a goal that's achievable. When the money's the goalpost never stops moving. You hit that goal and the goalpost will keep moving back inevitably. And so when what you're doing with the money is the goal, you actually reach it. It's just so much healthier.
Marla, what's your next money conversation going to be, and who's it going to be with?
We are deep in user testing with professional women. We talk to them about purpose and meaning and authenticity and what money means to them. What I love about those conversations is it gives us an opportunity to have them open up. And it gives me an opportunity separately to kind of share, look, I've been in the financial industry my whole life. I've made God knows how many mistakes, and I continue making mistakes. I enjoy speaking openly about my struggle. I recently put a post out of if only. This term, if only, I think is an important conversation to have about money. Everything with respect to money, you look back and say, oh, if only I had done that. If only I had taken that job, gotten that degree, invested at this time in this stock, pulled out of that stock. It's a really hard thing to get control of. And so I think just not asking that question is a conversation that I enjoy having with people who are looking to feel more wellness.
I love that. The past is the past. We got today and tomorrow. Marla, would you share where is the best place for our listeners to find you digitally?
LinkedIn is the best place. Marla Sofer. You can also check me out at our website, knomee.com, Knomee with 2 E's. I'm most active on LinkedIn. We're just building out the other places.
You're doing some really amazing work. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for pushing down these barriers for female founders. I think it's really, really important. It's been great to talk with you on Money Tales.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. I really appreciated it.
Thanks for listening to the Money Tales podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you think would benefit from listening. And leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Your ratings and reviews help more people find our podcast. If you're inspired to gain clarity and peace of mind about financial matters, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at Aspirient. Go to aspirient.com/start a dialogue. Or you can email Sandy and me at podcasts@aspirient.com. See you next time.